These are true stories I wrote from the perspective of real-life events. Names and locations have been changed to protect the identity of the victims. I captured a ghost. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it. A video I'd filmed at an abandoned hospital had captured what seemed like a ghost. The hospital had always given me the creeps, but this was something else. On God, this is a true story. I mean, just look it up after I tell you. It all started when a security guard, visibly shaken, confided in me about witnessing unexplained phenomena in the hospital. I thought he was losing his mind, but his words earned my curiosity, to say the least. So I decided to document it. Walking down the dimly lit corridors, I nervously panned my camera around. The place felt eerie and silent. Then, as I continued down the halls, I saw it, a dark, all-black figure emerging from a doorway down the corridor. My heart raced. I quickly turned the camera back to where the ghost had appeared just seconds earlier, but it had vanished without a trace, thinking I had missed my chance to capture proof, but I was wrong. Back home, as I reviewed the footage, I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling. The dark figure in the video was more chilling than I had realized. Believe me when I tell you, I'm not one of those YouTube channels that sets out to capture fake ghost footage. This was truly disturbing. Back home, as I reviewed the footage, I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling. The dark figure in the video was more chilling than I had realized. As I shared the video online, it caused quite a stir. Some viewers suggested it might be a shadow person. Supernatural, shadow-like humanoid figures often seen flickering on walls and ceilings in the viewer's peripheral vision. This is pretty atypical for a shadow person, one commenter remarked. Shadow people are usually seen in your periphery, passing by or standing in a corner. It's really rare to catch shadow people on camera, much less on video. I don't know what this is, but someone needs to investigate that room. It's a very interesting video. Others were skeptical, believing that the video might be edited. I believe this is edited, just looks too effing real, one Redditor user commented. Like the best ghost capture ever type deal, so that's why I instinctively believe this is to be fake. If this is edited, they should be in the movie industry. Another added, could easily be faked, but it still gave me the creeps. That dark hallway you're heading into doesn't look like fun either. Driven by curiosity, I returned to the hospital, determined to capture more footage. But as I reached the same eerie hallway, my camera inexplicably stopped working. I know this sounds like a bullshit cop-out, but it did. And I know I did everything to make sure that it wouldn't happen. I checked the battery, I checked the lens. The fact my camera wouldn't turn on was disturbing in and of itself. At that moment, I wanted to get the hell out. Panic set in as I fumbled with the device. And that's when I saw it again. The dark figure emerging from the doorway, staring blankly at me. Terrified, I fled the hospital, whispering to myself, never again, never again, never again. I don't know how these YouTube channels can easily head into abandoned locations and spend hours in what I call nope zones. My friends, believe me, some mysteries are best left unsolved, and this hospital held secrets that were better off undisturbed. The chilling encounter had convinced me that some things were not meant to be explored, and I decided to leave the ghostly apparitions behind, buried in the dark recesses of that abandoned hospital. I'm Elias, just your average, friendly nurse, working in a city I've come to adore. For what reasons specifically, I don't know. But it was nice to have a job and be working again. I guess you could say that I'm grateful for the friends I've made, specifically sweet Sarah, who made me feel welcome right from my first shift. She allowed me to rent a basement suite, which I thought was nice. Saved me the trouble of living across the city in a terrible part of town. And she was fond of my cooking, so I guess you can say our relationship was symbiotic of sorts. One day, while I was working, I decided to meet an infamously unfriendly older patient by the name of Mrs. Johnson, who had nothing but complaints. For days, it was all that anyone had been talking about. Miserable old Mrs. Johnson. But today, I decided to try and fix that, being the interpersonal fellow that I am. In an attempt to brighten her day, I decided to visit her in her room and strike up a conversation. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Johnson. How are you feeling today?" I asked with a smile, hoping it came off as sincere. She scowled and replied, "Oh, just another day in this dreadful place. No one ever comes to see me, you know." Her eyes winced. "Who are you?" she said crossly. "Hey, sorry about that. I'm Elias, the nurse for this round." I nodded empathetically. "I came to see you, Mrs. Johnson," I said, hoping to ease her tension with a smile. It didn't work. "What do you want?" she scowled. "Well, I've been told to give you an electrolyte boost to help you feel better. It'll help fight off your infection." Mrs. Johnson's confusion was evident. Shouldn't a doctor have at least updated me directly? Where is she? With a gentle touch and a soft smile, I assured her, "Don't worry, the doctor is just super busy. As you know, the hospital's overcrowded, but rest assured, I'm a registered nurse, right below a doctor. And well, this will help you feel more relaxed and comfortable." Her eyes rolled emphatically. "Hurry up and get out. I want to sleep." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I watched the clear liquid ooze gently from the needle before I slowly inserted it into the cannula. Watching the needle's contents drain into the plastic tube tighten my core made me feel alive. A thrilling and invigorating feeling coursed through every part of me. Then the needle's barrel was empty. The world and its sounds returned. "You finished?" Mrs. Johnson said, demanding my attention with her irritated face. I smiled softly, letting out a sigh. "That's it." After my shift ended, I headed over to Sarah's house with some food. We indulged in Popeyes and a movie, and after getting my fill, I was so tired that I dozed off on her cozy couch, oblivious to the late hour. I woke up in the middle of the night, disoriented and slightly panicked, knowing I wasn't in my own bed. But I sighed in relief once I noticed I was only in Sarah's living room. I sat up on the couch, hardly able to see anything, and waited a moment until my eyes adjusted. I glanced toward the kitchen, which was shrouded in pitch black. In a terrifying instant, a pale face emerged from the shadows, sunken black eyes visible in the dim light. It was Mrs. Johnson from the hospital, or at least it appeared to be. I hoped it was only a bad dream. I leapt from the couch and rushed to turn on the lights, but when I looked back, there wasn't anyone there. I could feel my sweat pouring like rain over my hammering heart. I turned on a lamp, shut the living room light off, and turned on the TV to fill the room with some light and quiet noise. My eyes remained wide open until morning. It wasn't a dream. At the table during breakfast, I was unusually quiet with Sarah, who noticed my silence. She asked with concern, "Elias, is everything okay? You seem distracted." I hesitated for a moment, not wanting to burden her with this strange occurrence. "Oh, it's nothing. I just had a weird dream last night. I'm fine." I faked a smile. During my next shift, I saw that Mrs. Johnson's room was empty. I asked the floor clerk what had happened to her, attempting to make light of the question. Do we finally get a break from misery? But the clerk didn't laugh, informing me that during the night, Mrs. Johnson had died. "Which is unbelievable," the clerk said. "She only had a minor infection. Her doctor and family had no idea what happened. I heard they're looking into it." "Oh my God," I said with a soft, regretful tone. Later that night, I entered the darkened room where she had passed away. Just yesterday, old Mrs. Johnson had lain in that bed. Now she's gone, I thought. Poor Mrs. Johnson. Now she can't bother anyone. Now she can't feel so alone and abandoned by her family. And as I gazed callously at the white sheets, a pale hand suddenly grabbed the edge of the bed on the other side. I jumped back in terror, nearly fleeing the room, but the hand was no longer there. I went to inspect, but there was no one around or under the bed. In the locker room, a fellow nurse, Lisa, noticed my distress and asked with concern, "Elias, are you alright? You literally look like you've seen a ghost." I tried to compose myself, but my voice quivered as I replied, "I'm fine, Lisa. Just had a rough night's sleep, and that's all." As I washed my face, I couldn't help but glance up at the mirror. Over my shoulder, she appeared again, the old lady, Mrs. Johnson, her wide, bloodshot eyes staring back at me with stillness. A knock on the door interrupted my fear, and Lisa told me that our boss wanted to speak with me. I looked back, but Mrs. Johnson's form wasn't there. "I need some sleep, that's all. I need some sleep," I thought repeatedly. I opened the door to the chief resident, his face marked with concern. I knew he could see the beads of sweat emerging from every inch of my exposed skin. Even my scrubs were probably soaked, but I couldn't tell for sure with my narrow vision and insides turning in knots. "Elias, come on in," the chief resident demanded. When I walked past the short access way, there sat two detectives sitting upright, their eyes fixed on my entrance. The chief resident confirmed that they were detectives, simply wanting to ask me a few questions. He told me to sit at a chair they placed in the corner of the room, away from the door. Sitting there, I could feel my calves shaking against the steel chair legs. "Is everything okay?" I said, trying to hide my discomfort with a light grin. They questioned me about Mrs. Johnson, whether I had gone into her room at all, or if I saw anyone go in or out of her room. And most alarmingly, they asked me about my prior jobs and why I moved around so much. I denied having any direct contact with her, and that I didn't see anybody go in or out of her room. In response to why I moved so much, I said, "I don't have much family," hoping to gain empathy, and being the way I am, some cities aren't so accepting of that, if you know what I mean. The detective reflected on the notes in his lap. "Says here you worked in New York. You're telling me you weren't accepted there?" My eyes rolled. "New York was different," I explained. "I went through a bad breakup and things didn't work out. I needed a change of scenery." They exchanged knowing glances, sensing something was amiss, but I brushed it off, knowing I could blame my appearance on a busy shift working for an officially overcrowded hospital. "Did you get much sleep last night, Elias?" the other detective asked. I remembered Mrs. Johnson's tormented face emerging from the blackness. "Yeah, it was okay. Ate a bad patch of chicken though," I tittered. Months passed, and day by day, I found myself longing to sate my thirst for adrenaline. I carefully studied the patients, learning little by little about each of them. I needed to find one who had no one who cared about them, someone whose passing wouldn't bother anyone. After all, what's the point of living if no one cares about them? I have Sarah. She cares about me. Then I found him, a man who had nearly died of a heart attack, if not for the miracle of modern technology giving him a second chance at life by way of a heart monitor. This old man didn't even have a cat that cared about him. So one evening, I went to introduce myself. "Hello," I said, stepping into the room. "Tom Gray?" "Yes," he said. I must admit, he seemed like a sweet old man, as his face brightened when I walked into the room. "How are you doing, doctor?" he said in a slow, shaky voice. I smiled. "Not a doctor, unfortunately. I'm a nurse." He laughed. "Oh, I'm sorry, young man. Back when, you didn't get too many men as nurses, but that's all right." I despised that notion. Lighthearted laughter or not, he just made it easier to do what I was about to do. I put on a smile. "I understand, Mr. Gray." "Oh, please, call me Tom," he kindly insisted. "Well, Tom, I just came in to fill in for the doctor, and it's my understanding to keep your heart nice and strong, I'm assigned to administer a light dose of electrolytes, so this won't take but a second." His smile faded and he looked away for a moment in thought, then looked back at me with a hint of understanding. "Oh, okay." I uncapped the needle, and again, time slowed as I watched that death serum pour gently from the tip of the needle down the chromatic sliver. I picked up the cannula from his bedside, but it slipped from my fingers and swung near to the floor. I bent to retrieve it, and as my gaze came up past the edge of the bed, just over Tom, there was Mrs. Johnson. She was pale and angry, her eyes empty, her lips peeled past her long, exposed teeth. I squealed in terror, and the needle flung out of my hand and onto the floor. I shook my head and panicked to pick it up. "Sorry about that," I stammered quickly. "Now, wait a minute," Tom said uneasily. That's not clean." "Oh, no," he shouted, pressing the call button. My hands shook, and I couldn't keep the needle still. It's okay," I desperately repeated. "Get the hell out of here," Tom shouted, his heart monitor beeping distraughtly. I knew I needed to leave, so I capped the needle and ran out of the room, quickly disappearing into the halls. Sweating and anxious, I drove home and hurried to my basement suite, where I stuffed clothes into my duffel bags. During my duress, I heard a knock on the door. "Elias, are you okay?" It was Sarah. She probably noticed my car outside. What the hell was she doing up? "Elias, I can see your car. Are you okay?" She wouldn't stop knocking, driving up my anxiety. I had to sit on my couch to gather my thoughts, and in the moment I did, I saw the most terrifying sight of my life. Standing in front of me were the rotting bodies of faces I held only in memory, in nightmares. The faces of each person whose life I had taken, standing there, still, like an intervention of dead soldiers lined up in demand of an apology. I'm sorry, I pleaded, but they wouldn't leave. Sarah's knocks grew more and more frustrated. The sound of sirens began to ascend outside, and the dead bodies began to whisper in my ear all at once, reminding me of what I had done to them. I couldn't take it, so I uncapped the needle and once more watched the liquid spill from the tip. I rolled up my sleeve, and at the sight of the first usable vein, I plunged the needle in deep and quickly emptied its contents into my blood. There, in the middle of the pale, tormented spirits, the old lady stared coldly at me until the moment I succumbed to darkness. I was a late night security guard at St. John's Hospital, the city's oldest, still finding my footing on my third day on the job. Thankfully, I was assigned my first shift by myself, which was a relief because my supervisor's constant political rants were annoying. Not because I'm a girl, but because, my God, political banter gets old fast. So I was in a good mood to start, and despite the hospital's old, damp, and somewhat creepy vibe, the empty hallways felt strangely comforting in their stillness. I had always preferred to be alone. That was until one night during my rounds when a sudden piano note echoed through the corridor just around the corner. I made my way into the lobby where the sound had originated, knowing it was closed to visitors. My eyes settled on the old, rickety piano, bathed in dim light, but there was no one there. Approaching it cautiously, I hesitated before playing a note to myself. The sound hung in the air, and I scanned the lobby, but there was no sign of anyone else. I would have at least heard footsteps if someone fled. Puzzled, I went to the only other person on duty on that floor, an emergency admissions staff member, to ask if anyone had recently come in. She was certain that no one had been admitted in that area for hours. I brushed it off, shrugging it off as a wandering patient or someone simply leaving the building. I like to think that logistical explanations were my refuge. A week later, my rounds led me past the piano once more. Not 3 seconds after having my back turned to it, the piano emitted a solitary note, sending shivers down my spine. Instantly, I spun around, heart pounding, calling out to the silence. "Who's there? This section's closed." No one answered. I took a deep breath and quickly surveyed the lobby. After having just cleared the area, I knew it was impossible for someone to just appear behind me, let alone flee without a sound or trace. Freaked out, I hurried to admissions and recounted the strange event. The staff member, sweet as she was, jokingly attributed the occurrence to the hospital's age, being over 100 years old, suggesting that I wouldn't be the first to hear things in its history. "Do you ever hear or see anything?" I asked her. She thought about it and shrugged. "No," she said, "but in this part of town, I saw some spooky things. Both times patients, still alive. Mostly," she joked. "Okay," I replied, still worried. I reasoned that maybe, hopefully, a piano key had been stuck and came loose, or a mouse had jumped on the key and scurried away. Either way, I was still on probation, and no matter how freaky things were, I couldn't just abandon my post. Despite the reassurance, I couldn't shake the feeling that something odd was happening. That night, I sat on my phone, researching and scrolling through the hospital's history to find experiences similar to mine. After hours of going down that rabbit hole, I stumbled upon a revelation. St. John's Hospital, a Catholic institution in the 1940s, once hosted a priest who visited every Sunday to pray for the patients. He appeared to be a beloved man who brought joy to the institution. More startling, I found that he was also an accomplished pianist, a fact I learned from an odd black and white photograph. In it, he sat at the piano, flanked by a nun and 2 nurses. That was the exact same piano. My heart skipped a beat as I connected the dots. The days I heard the piano were all Sundays. Could it be that the priest's spirit lingered, yearning to play the instrument that had brought solace to countless souls? But why would he play it for me? I realized I was overthinking and closed my browser with the information, doing everything to redirect my thoughts. At that point, I'd even let my supervisor babble my ears off about his politics just to get it off my mind. Thankfully, after a few days, it did slip away. Sort of. Days turned into weeks, and life outside the hospital demanded my attention as well. Although every time I walked past the piano, I thought of the priest, the creepiness of it all began to subside. Life was back to normal, and I was actually enjoying my new job. But I was still worried about my mother, who I spoke with all the time. She was battling cancer, and one day she called me with the news that soaked my face with tears of joy. Her cancer was in remission. She said that the doctor couldn't explain how, being that the disease was considered terminal. She just chalked it up as, "The Lord is good, my baby," and I couldn't argue with that. Feeling great, I returned to work on another Sunday evening. Late at night, during my rounds, I had this strange feeling as if the piano awaited me in the lobby. I stared at it, thinking of the priest and the joy he once brought to his patients many generations ago. As I walked past the piano, once again, the same note rang out. This time, I didn't jump, nor was I afraid. I stopped gingerly, my eyes scrolling to the side. For whatever reason, I smiled, feeling a profound connection of joy. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice filled with gratitude. At that moment, I felt strongly that St. John's Hospital was more than just old, smelly bricks and mortar. It was a place where history and the present met, where spirits of the past still sought to touch the lives of those who walked its halls. My mother's cancer never returned, nor have I heard the piano since. But I decided to start taking classes. And hey, now I can play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.